Hey nerds, Farmer Jesse here. Welcome to Growers Daily, your daily dose of ecological farming insight. It is Monday, December 22nd, 2025, and today we are talking straw mulch leveled up, not what you think it is, tannins in the groundwater, and scams, like literally scams. That's actually what we're going to talk about. So let's do it. All right, happy Monday, everyone. I hope you all are well and good and all those things, and that your weekends were lovely. Mine was pretty laid back, typical stuff, watching soccer, hanging out with kids, all that stuff. One of my kids has their birthday this week, so we did some special things for that, but almost nothing farm related. Oh, never mind. I actually did get the seeds officially ordered this weekend, so that feels good to have that marked off the list. Gonna work on getting the, greenhouse all cleaned up this week and the shed area, because the 2026 growing season is right around the living corner. It's always just like right on the verge of the next season. Oh, and we're officially over the sunlight hump. The solstice happened, and so the light is finally returning a little bit, slowly and coldly, but it's returning. Winter is still very much here, but I like this time of year because it feels more hopeful with the extra sunlight every day, even if it's colder. Can't imagine it getting a lot colder than December, but even when it's colder. A couple schedule things for the week. Mike and I are not going to be producing this show on Wednesday, Thursday, or Friday while we do the whole family/holiday thing, but we will be back on Monday. Then we may even do our December live show on New Year's Eve. That could be fun. So there's that, and I hope everyone has a nice, relaxing holiday week while we're away. Yeah, all right. So today I thought I would talk not necessarily about mulch for our mulch series, but rather an interesting use of mulch I recently came across that falls into my love of ecological restoration and mulching, sort of. So a double bonus there. The idea is the use of hay or straw as windbreaks in the desert. So let me back up. One of the challenges of regenerating desert soil isn't just the lack of moisture, which is obvious. It's that the dang soil just doesn't stay put very well. Desert sands tends to blow around, which will cover shrubs and trees that are, anything you try and plant. And the seeds that might normally germinate tend to struggle because they are either being covered or blown around themselves. So one of the first steps to recovering a desert, at least in this example, is figuring out how to keep the soil in place. It's kind of where it starts. One way in which that can happen, and is happening in parts of China and elsewhere, is through grids of mulch. But this is not what it sounds like. The mulch is not on the ground. It's not like in its bale. It's more in the air. Basically, imagine laying a little bit of straw on some sand and then taking a flat shovel or something and shoving the middle of that straw into the sand. What you get is that the straw sort of stands straight up, right? Because the middle of it has been shoved into the ground, so it looks, for lack of a better and more evocative image, like someone being shoved into a trash can. The head and the legs would still be straight up. And this is done in sort of small grids, so it looks somewhat like a checkerboard pattern, which is how this is sometimes referred to in the literature. Straw checkerboards or straw grids. And the effect is essentially miniature windbreaks that changes the wind flow structure as it passes over the sand, thus decreasing the erosion. So yeah, where you sometimes see grids of trees around agriculture, right? We see this sometimes in different parts of the world. This is that, only much smaller, closer to the ground. And instead of trees, it's dried grass. Some of the beauty of this is that, well, one, it uses a lot less material than literally mulching the desert. So there's that. It expands the utility of a small amount of mulch in a sense, which is good if you're trying to do this over, large acreage. But it also provides a less windy climate that will more readily enable the growth of some desert-loving plants and then eventually repair that soil to be able to grow more and more vegetation. So here's why I bring this particular idea up. One, we need to work on regenerating the deserts in the western U.S., and perhaps ideas like this or others, as determined by those local ecologists, could be helpful, or at least they show it's possible. Those deserts in the west determine a lot about our weather out here in the Midwest and the east, and as the deserts continue to grow in size, we have to start, as a nation, making a stand. In this case, maybe a literal stand of straw. But I'm not here trying to instruct, ecologists in those areas and arid climates how to do their work. Only trying to tell the people of the world that there are some cool, potentially lo-fi options for repairing our deserts and maybe stabilizing our climate a little bit. However, the other side of bringing this up is that maybe there is a place for this sort of idea in gardens and drier areas where, instead of sinking the beds into the soil, maybe building these borders around the beds, similar perhaps to some of the indigenous agriculture I've mentioned before on this podcast, like waffle gardens and that sort of stuff. The straw could help protect the beds from wind and drying out, thus conserving water. In other words, this idea wouldn't just have to be relegated to large-scale restoration projects, but could likewise be an approach to water management in more arid climates on any scale. Anyway, I'm always looking for interesting ideas in the world to utilize for ecological market gardening, and I can hardly think of a better embodiment of that idea than using a tactic that can literally help repair deserts to help repair and protect garden soils. If nothing else, it's interesting, but let me know your thoughts or any ideas along these lines that you've seen or heard of or maybe even tried. Otherwise, we're going to take a quick break. When we return, tannins in wine are one thing, tannins in your groundwater, BRB.
Hey Jesse, it's Ben in Louisville, Kentucky, Zone 6B, showing you the garlic I planted in October and the field peas that, like you, I planted in September. They're starting to be dead from the cold snap. Still green. I'm going to cover them up with this leaf mulch.
Today's episode is brought to you by Johnny's Selected Seeds. Johnny's Selected Seeds is a proud supporter of Growers Daily. At Johnny's, they do more than sell seeds. They grow them. They trial them to see how they perform on Johnny's research farm in Maine and across the U.S. and Canada. Only the best varieties are added to their catalog and website. When you need proven varieties you can count on and detailed guidance from seedling to harvest, consider Johnny's your trusted growing partner. JohnnySeeds.com. That's JohnnySeeds.com. All right, back to the show. If you, the listener or viewer, are enjoying this podcast, getting even a small amount of value from it, consider supporting our work over at patreon.com/no-till-growers. I will try to get to questions from everywhere the questions come in, but I will always get to your Patreon questions. Now, today's Patreon question comes to us from Patreon member David Bunnell, who writes, quote, "Hi, Jesse. We just drilled a new well on property purchased last year, and we have brown tannins. The water test is not back yet, but the driller says it's common for our area. We will filter for our home, but how is it for irrigation? What can we expect? I haven't found yays or nays on this subject. Thanks for your insights. David, Whidbey Island, Washington, 8B," end quote. Okay, so great stuff. Love it, David. Now, not a question I've got before, which is fun. It makes me think of this one time. In fact, I was going to see an old friend. Maybe I've told this story on the podcast. I can't remember, but they had just recently cleared an overgrown field of small trees with one of those like forest mulching machines. These machines, they quite literally just shred trees, like they're giant like tree bush hogs. Anyway, it was also raining that day when I went to visit, and all the water around the trees and like on the road and stuff was dark from the tannins and pigments leaching from the trees. All the puddles, all the water runoff, it kind of looked like, I don't know, like tea. It was quite odd to see. Anyway, so yes, this is a thing in certain areas, and often it points to a lot of the water for that particular source coming from runoff as opposed to like filtered groundwater. Essentially, when the water passes over a bunch of leaves and nuts and, tree bark or whatever, as it was in the example I gave above, going to visit my friend, the result is a high concentration of tannins. And you're right, you don't really, when you read about it, get a lot of yays or nays. So let's talk a little bit about what we kind of know for tannins in irrigation. Well, it depends a little bit on the concentration, like how much of a concern this will be. A small amount of tannins in the water, depending on the makeup of the tannins, can be largely fine, even driving down the pH in some cases, but higher concentrations, or as it accumulates in the soil, can reduce the soil's ability to retain nutrients through a lower cation exchange capacity, and even perhaps limit the soil's ability to create soil organic matter. The effects are complex and depend on a number of factors, but in general, I think filtering the tannins out is going to be more preferred here. Again, they may not harm anything, they may be fine, but I'm not sure it's worth the long-term risk of that. And since it's surface runoff, perhaps there are ways, like plants, that can help prevent the tannins from entering the system to begin with. So I am not going to advise on which filtration system to look at necessarily for the irrigation. I would just talk to an irrigation specialist in your area who has experience with this. They may also be able to advise you on how important, based on your tannin levels, filtration would be for you as well, and how to limit the tannins that get into the system to begin with. There may be simple, cheaper solutions out there, and no doubt other growers in your area have had to contend with this particular issue. So it may be something that, although I can't find a ton, about it in the literature necessarily, is actually really well, quote unquote, studied locally. I like this question because although sure there are places all over the world that probably deal with something like tannins in the irrigation water or other natural issues, so many things about farming are just like hyper local to us. No two farms are the same. No two situations are identical. It's one of the things that makes farming difficult and amazing simultaneously. In order to do this job well, you have to build a relationship with your land, and sometimes that requires you to build a relationship with nearby people who have gone through a similar thing. The sheer act of farming forces us to know and appreciate the land and our communities. Either that or the farm fails, I guess. Anyway, final rant there aside, I hope that was at least a little bit helpful for you to get started on the right foot. I hesitate to give you too definitive of an answer here, only because there are almost certainly folks in your area who could do a better job of that and have firsthand experience. So as it goes, sometimes my answer, I suppose, is to tap into that resource. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, scams, because why not? Be right back.
Today's episode is brought to you by FarmRaise. Still struggling with your balance sheet? Your lender's asking for a balance sheet and you're stuck with a spreadsheet mess or guessing your numbers? FarmRaise Tracks takes the stress out of farm finance. With one click, you can generate an accurate, up-to-date balance sheet that shows your assets, liabilities, and equity. No accounting degree required. You'll be ready for loan applications, tax season, or just a clearer picture of where your farm stands. Join thousands of farmers using Tracks to build stronger businesses. Get 20% off with code NOTIL20 at farmraise.com for the lifetime of your membership.
Today's episode is also brought to you by Farmhand. Farmers who partnered with Farmhand say they grew an average of 63% this year because it's more than software. Farmhand is your business coach and assistant, helping to sell out, save time, and grow smarter with real data from real farms, shaping websites that convert, campaigns that sell, and fulfillment systems that run smoothly. Curious what that looks like? Meet the founder, Ari, at farmhand.partners/no-till and see the same insights and support the fastest growing farms rely on every week. That's farmhand.partners/no-till. All right, back to the show. All right, in today's edition of Jesse Talks About Something non-farm related, but tries to make it farm related, I want to talk about scams. We should start this one off by wishing Mike good luck on finding B-roll for it. But here's the thing. I try as often as I can to discuss things that have almost nothing to do at all with farming, but at least on the periphery, it could be helpful to farmers, or maybe just what I'm fascinated by at the moment. Hopefully both. Anyhow, the idea being that sometimes we need to break up the nerdery, and today that thing to break up the soil nerdery is scam nerdery. Billions of dollars each year are stolen from people through various scams, and they are only getting more and more clever and sophisticated. I read an article recently about a retired lawyer who ended up getting scammed out of $85,000 because he basically and inadvertently allowed a bogus tech support company that he found on Google into his computer. They managed to get into his bank account and rapidly extract the money in a matter of hours, and his bank, Citibank, saw nothing weird somehow because it was, coming from his bank account, and Citibank notably refused to pay him back. This sort of thing is becoming more and more common, especially for older Americans. I'm going to read here from the article that I was talking about, linked in the show notes. Quote, Americans over age 60 lost roughly $982 million last year to tech support scams alone, one of the more lucrative frauds, according to the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Internet Crime Complaint Center. That figure is up 66% from 2023, but it's still just a fraction of the estimated $16.6 billion cyber criminals took in 2024 overall, up 33% from the year before, and widely viewed as an underrepresentation since so much fraud goes unreported, end quote. Those numbers are just bananas. The connections, I suppose, to farming is that the age range of people over 60s describes a lot of farmers, and I thought maybe just putting out a call to be exceedingly but also increasingly careful with your bank information would not be the worst idea and worst reminder. AI is going to make this whole problem even more challenging, and not just for the less savvy among us who are often the targets, but for everyone. People are already falling for an embarrassing amount of AI-generated videos on places like Facebook, and that does not bode well for being scammed. Like, if you fall for one of those videos, your likelihood of being scammed is probably pretty high. One day, a voice that sounds like your child, or a voice that sounds like a celebrity, or your buddy Farmer Jesse even, could call you and say they're in trouble and need money, and could you help and, help them out. Maybe they'll even send you a video using your name in the video and the date. And if you think that's crazy, this exact thing just happened to a bunch of people who thought they were talking to professional female golfers who were sent videos of those golfers who addressed the person being scammed by name. Indeed, these people were sent videos that looked like professional golfers walking around their own houses and addressing them by name. Like, what could be more convincing than that? The videos were fake, but looked and sounded absolutely real. If you are not tech savvy, you may never realize this is even possible and eagerly hand over your bank information or send money. And obviously, I'm never going to call you and be like, hey, send me some money. I do a show. I ask for donations at the end. I do that stuff publicly. I mean, if you're tech savvy, you may still fall for it, as evidenced by the number of people liking and sharing AI generated videos as if they were real all over social media right now, which let's all please challenge ourselves to be a little less gullible than that, or we're just completely doomed. So what to do to avoid scams? I think being interested in them is a good place to start, honestly. I read almost every scam article that comes up. Part of that is just curiosity. I also stay up to date on AI by listening to podcasts like Hard Fork and others just to know what it's capable of. Yes, me, who could care less about this technology and frankly disdain its existence and what it's going to do for our environment and society. I'm weirdly quite informed on the subject. Strange. Anyway, just a reminder to be careful with your information, friends. I would hate to see ecological growers lose the savings or startup capital they managed to scrounge. So yeah, PSA done. Let me know your thoughts. Otherwise, I think we're done here Monday. I hear it's warming up outside, so I'm going to enjoy that a bit this week, calling for nearly 70 degrees on Christmas. Don't forget, No Till Growers is now officially a nonprofit 501c3, so donations are tax deductible and greatly appreciated. You can learn more about how to do that in the show notes. Please make sure to like and subscribe and or follow wherever you're getting this podcast. That's an easy way to help us out as well. Enormous thank you to all of our show sponsors. And if you'd ever like to sponsor the show, you can reach out to Farmer Michelle at notillgrowers.com. Huge shouts to Willie Breeding for the theme music, or Mike Hilbert for the production help and editing. Also my wife Hannah for absolutely everything in the world. 14 years together now. Amazing. Also, shouts to Epidemic Sound for the background music that you can hear. I can't hear it. You can hear it. It's probably awesome. Mike does a good job. Pick up a hat or a copy of my book, The Living Soil Handbook, at notillgrowers.com to support this work. Big thank you to everyone over at patreon.com/notillgrowers, where at a certain level, or if you just bump up from one level to another, or you sign up in the month of December, you get a shout out on the show. So big shout outs today to Denise Crouch, Honeyworks, and Jenna Murray. Or Gina. Gina or Jenna? Does it require two N's to be a Jenna? I don't know. Keeping us on our toes here. All right, so today's story is about a journalist named Bella who works in Paris, and she's, a foreign correspondent. And anyway, Bella gets this message from her editor that there has been this whole village discovered in the French Alps, and it was so deep in the mountains and woods that literally no one ever noticed it. So her editor wants her to go see if she can, find it and kind of figure out what the story is there. And apparently it's really hard to get to. So are there people living there? How did it get there? Why is it there? So as a dutiful journalist, even though hiking wasn't necessarily her thing, she went ahead and set out on a hike through the Alps with a local guide. And it was tough, into mountains, deep into the woods, hot at times, cold at others. It was just a brutal hike. And anyway, sure enough, just where the source said it was, there's a village. Only this village wasn't like any village Bella had ever seen before, or frankly ever envisioned. But that is for tomorrow on The Village People. Nope, that's a band. Anyway, we'll tell the rest of the story tomorrow, provided we get some signups. If not, poor Bella. Anyway, thanks for watching and or listening. We'll see you then. Bye.